Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the Cybersecurity webinar live cast. I'd like to welcome you to our session here today. We're trying to be as efficient as possible because we understand that we'll be creeping up on Isha prayer in about 45 minutes to an hour. The main purpose of the webinar is to educate and to share with everyone the concepts around cybersecurity and some of the, sort of recent challenges that we've seen in terms of how everything has gone online from schooling as well as work. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to share with all of you what we know and what we've learned. And I'm joined here by two experts in cybersecurity, mashallah. So first, we will have Brother Kamran Siddiqui, who many of you are familiar with. He has over 20 years of experience in various cybersecurity disciplines, ranging from network and application security to risk management. And he's worked in various industries, including some very large global organizations, managing teams globally. And currently, he handles the cybersecurity for the Americas region of HSBC. And outside of his professional career, he volunteers at the local masjid as well as participates in the political process at the state level. And he moved to the Lehigh Valley 15 years ago. And he's very busy with his 3 teenage boys at home. And then our second expert, who's also with us, I go back with him many years. We actually went to school together. Is Atif Gauri, and he's a renowned cybersecurity expert with 20 years of experience in management consulting, technical sales operations, product management, consumer devices, activity anomalies. And prior to joining Mazars, which is where he is currently, Atif led a big project, $250 million geographical expansion and sales and strategy for the company's most profitable and fastest growing business as Senior Vice President of Managed Security Services. And Atif is very active in multiple masajids, the Beta Foundation, and a couple of other places. So let's get it started. We don't want to take too much time. I just wanted to ensure that everybody's aware that we are not doing this as, sort of vloggers, like video bloggers, just sort of taking a shot at it. The idea came to us from our religious director, Mahmoud Al-Shanawi. Many of you know him. His concern was, there's not enough knowledge out there for this type of information. So I'd like to get us started and let's get underway. So the first question for our guests, and we'll run this in a question-answer format. So we'll go about 30 minutes with our security experts, giving us insight into some of the areas that we'll be talking about. And then at around the 8:30 mark, about 30 minutes in, we'll switch it over to Q&A. So our audience gets an opportunity to talk with us. We are live on YouTube and Facebook right now. So if you are joining us, please share with your friends and family. And if they would benefit from this, then please have them join us on Facebook and YouTube. So first question is going to be around what is different from the time before COVID lockdown, which was about towards the end of March, until now as it relates to cybersecurity. So Brother Kamran, if you can take that. Brother Kamran, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
sorry,
we can hear you now. Yeah. No worries.
All right, let me go back to start. So people have been working from home across multiple disciplines lately since the lockdown, and it's not just limited to IT. Physicians, different disciplines, people are working, from online. And not only that, we have online classes for students from school as well as colleges. And so it's important that we do a better job in security, because more usage of internet means more opportunities for hackers to steal information. And that really means that, we need to understand what cybersecurity is about and take appropriate measures so that we can secure ourselves, secure the access, and secure the usage by our kids that are spending, several hours on internet during the lockdown than they were before we started the lockdown back in March. So I think that's why it's very important. Things are very different now.
And how about yourself, Atif?
Yeah, just if I could add in here, I would say one word: volume. Right? There's just a lot more than it was before, and so before we had people logging in from home occasionally, kids logged in occasionally, etc. But now it's just the lifestyle, and so with that, as Gamarbai explained as well, it's just a matter. There's more volume, so there's more attack surface. There's more places for the bad guys to go after, and then also the level of difficulty it goes down now, because before there was less people on actively involved, but now since there's so many more, the level of sophistication, like my mom or my just people that are not very tech literate, are actually depending on virtual transactions, virtual classes even, and then even as far as to get into ordering food or ordering things from Walmart, etc., Amazon. There's just a lot more transactions, and so that's the biggest change. It's the quality and the content hasn't changed. It's just the sheer volume.
So then the two of you, the main thing to understand is that it's not so much that the threats are any different. It's more really that because we're spending so much time online, we just need to be a little more careful, or a lot more careful, depending on how you look at it, because of the amount of time we're spending, as opposed to there's different threats out there that didn't exist before.
Yeah, and not just the amount of time, it's also the more sensitive information is being traveled through home network. So when a physician is performing consultation over the phone, and I had my doctor's appointment a couple of weeks ago over the phone, so there is obviously medical records information being utilized from a home network, which was originally being done from a clinic, which is a little bit more secure in a private setting, right? So you have a lot more information that is traveling that needs to be protected, and it's not just the volume; it's just a lot more of sensitive information along with the volume.
So, one of the things that makes everybody nervous is some of these terms, right? I think we have the phishing, the vishing, the smushing, the pishing. There's so many different words. Like, I don't even know what they're called anymore. Like, we're all lost out here. Like, we see these words and we're like, what is being talked about here? So would one of you be able to just quickly give us an idea of what, I know, and we'll watch a video here in a few. I think it kind of goes into that. But if you can just quickly, in layman's terms, tell us the popular terms and just tell us, what do they mean?
Yep, I'll jump on that one. I'll start us off. I mean, to get the big one, if you walk away from one from this session with us together, is phishing, right? So it's not going to Atlantic City and putting the pole and trying to catch a fish. I mean, it's kind of like that, I guess. It's the bad guys are sending out an email or calling you or sending you a text message that says, "Hey, you just won something," or all of a sudden you're the luckiest person in the whole world. So go ahead and click on this thing. That's the fish, right? And so once you click on it, then bad things happen to your machine, and then they take over, and then the misery starts. But that's termed phishing, and I think that's with the PH to make it more. The cybersecurity world, we like to make everything really interesting with the words. So phishing is PHISCHNG is the most common one. There's others as well, but if you could just learn about phishing and be aware of how you're getting messages either through your phone or through email, or even sometimes people calling you and said you want something, you have to be more skeptical, and you have to be more inquisitive about what it actually is. Or better yet, don't even open it up, because chances are you're not the only person in the world that just got $10,000 for no reason at all. It's most likely a scam. So you could think of phishing as scam. Everybody understands scam.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can watch the video here in a few, but just for everybody's reference that's watching us live, we do have a PowerPoint slide deck with all of these resources that will become available to all of you at the end of the session. And we'll take Brother Conrad, anything else you wanted to share before we watch a quick video for the audience?
No, I think Atif explained it well. That there are other terminology that are used, and some of that is captured in the PowerPoint. But yeah, to really understand, I think if you want to take away one sort of jargon and what's happening, and that has been impacting the most, it's phishing. I think audio is not coming through.
Yeah, just
So what it's trying to show here is an email message that seems to look like it's coming from your bank, and it's got some information, and it's looking for things that to look for, like a website address.
yeah, and it is pointed out here the clicking of things. You should be cautious of what you actually click on, because clicking on your computer or on your phone actually matters. It triggers something, whether locally on your machine or on your phone itself. And I think what it's showing here now is just sometimes you'll get emails with a prompt to log into something. One quick best practice now is if you get an email from your bank, just type in the URL for your bank. So if your bank's TD Bank, type in tdbank.com onto the website into your browser instead of clicking on the link that came from the email. That's just a very simple thing you could do whenever you're asked to log into something over email. And you'll hear this a lot, but you never need to tell anybody your password. No security professional or IT professional will ever ask you for your password. So if someone's asking for your password, something's wrong. It's definitely a scam. Nobody ever asks for you for your password. And so this now we're showing up how different types of attacks come. Look at the subject, look at the front line of the email. Don't just believe the email that's coming in, because it's pretty easy to actually what we call spoof an email to someone and pretend like you're somebody else. Like I can pretend like I'm Kamran and send an email out in his name. But you have to look at the email carefully before you take it more seriously. And then what it's also explaining here is on Facebook, Instagram, all your personal information is out there. It's been volunteered either by you or by your kids or by your family members. It's out there so people can figure out your favorite team, your favorite color, what year you're born. So that's also an area that bad guys use to learn more about you and try to hack into your accounts.
So we had a little bit of an audio issue there. It was supposed to play audio, but you guys improvised well, so I appreciate that. I think you were able to narrate through it, and our audience that's been watching, you can actually go to this video on your own and watch through it with the audio. So that will be available. But to continue the conversation, I think one of the things that our community and just in general, those that are dealing with this online schooling and working from home, isn't a Wi-Fi password enough? I mean, when we make our Wi-Fi network at home and we have a router and we set up the password and we set up security, all the WPAs and all that stuff, isn't that enough to keep us protected?
No, it isn't. I mean, if you really look at Wi-Fi router is probably one of the most important devices at home. And so there are some still, simple steps that one can take to make it more secure. So obviously there is always a password when you install it, but it's a default, company password. So if you get a router from Linksys, a certain model, then all the routers from Linksys would have the same password, for example. So one of the first things that you need to do is change that password to something different. You need to make sure that the device is up to date. So just like you update your smartphone, when the new update comes through, you want to make sure that you update your router as well. And the other thing that you can do, like disable plug and play, remote access, and really have strong passwords. That's one of the key things that you can have is change password and have strong passwords. So there are a few simple steps that you can do that will make the home network more secure than just installing a router with default setting.
Yeah, just to add on to that, from a password is a good step forward, but just actually the management of that password. Oftentimes you'll tell everybody and their mother it, and you'll never change it for years and years and years and years. And so having the same password, one thing that I always see is you can use your phone number or some type of number with a letter in it as the password, but you want to rotate it and change it out, and then. There's some routers allow you to have a guest network as well, so you could have a different password for your guests, and that's what when you have a party at your house or something, all of a sudden you have 50 devices on your network. Guess what? Those passwords are stored in someone's phone, and then when they walk away, and so if their phone's breached or if their data is breached, then now all of a sudden your password's gone. So you want to rotate your passwords. It's basic security hygiene for your network. But I think to the earlier question, a lot of people don't even have a password, which is crazy, right? You definitely need a password. If you don't, what happens is I could come outside your house, and I could sit outside your house and just through my laptop, I could see all the messages that you're going throughout your house, like where you're going, what data you're passing, your credit card numbers, your preferences, what websites you're going to. It's all clear text to me if you didn't set a password.
So continuing on this stream, I think we're very high level at this point, very simple. I think as far as setting up the password and all of that, that's very helpful information. One of the recent, I don't know how recent it is, but something that's been circulating around a lot is this video of the parents that basically shared about how their 7-year-old daughter was online and was using a tablet, and every time she would get online, the advertisements that were showing up for her were absolutely inappropriate. And when they would take the tablet from her and they would use the tablet for an extended amount of time, the advertisements were no longer there that were inappropriate. So this is something that has made a lot of people very concerned and somewhat paranoid that this kind of thing is happening. What is your thought on, what we can do to protect our families from inappropriate content?
Yep, I'll jump on that one first. So if you're using, so there's parental controls. Short answer, parental controls. So parental controls exist for Apple products. One example where you could do safe filtering, which is basically part of the operating system. So if you go into your iPad or whatever the tablet device or even iPhone, and you type in parental controls, you'll get a whole bunch of options. And as you navigate through them, you'll see filtering. So it filters out known bad websites, advertising, content originators, etc. And something similar exists for Android and Google as well. That's probably the quickest way to do it on tablets, but also some of the routers that you have. If you dare to log into your router, once you log into the actual router in your house, they also have options for safe filtering. It's a harder challenge, but those are some of the ways that I'm familiar with, and I don't know if Gamal has some ideas too.
So is this kind of where, we're seeing these commercials lately from Apple where they're talking about, people are going out sharing their public information? I mean, is this the type of thing where if we're able to secure these devices, that makes the device secure, and there's not really much else that needs to be done around it?
Not really. I mean, so marketing hype is one thing, and things working in reality is another. So there's probably some sort of configuration required to enable some basic level of security. But I would use an analogy. If you live in a bad neighborhood, you don't just bolt your door. You probably would put a chain. You probably would have a camera outside to see. So there are different layers of security you sort of implement to secure your house. You might have a company that triggers an alarm if somebody comes in, and they can come back, come to you and help you out. So security is the same way, right? So you need to have different layers of security. So one is, for example, on the device level that Atif just mentioned. There's also at the application level. So if you're on YouTube, for example, you can set it on safe mode, so that way it will provide some safety. Then you got your parental control software that you can utilize, so that you can have age-based contents, as well as in terms of the type of contents, so you can filter those out. On browsers, you can set pop-ups to be blocked. You can definitely impose time limits. So there are certain things that you need to do, and there are multiple things you need to do if you want to, do a good job in securing your home network. So it's not just one action that will take care of it.
Yeah, but it's a real good point that was brought up. I think that really needs to be underscored, is the idea of a bad neighborhood, right? So there's a perception that, hey, I'm going to Google.com. It's a fun, colorful site, and I'm in a safe place. You are not in a safe place, right? The internet is, think of the worst neighborhood you've ever been into, times 10, right? That's what the internet is. Clear, dirty internet, we call it. And so the perception as humans, we are in a safe home, with lights and, comfort and heat, and we're sitting down on a computer. The computer's not yelling at us or screaming, or there's no gunshots. But imagine all that's happening on the internet, right? The equivalent of that's happening. So in a way, we have to change our minds to think that, you really need to trust where you're going, versus assuming that, the safety around you is actually in your computer as well, because it's not, right? It's not.
So, I mean, to continue on with this, I think two main areas where a lot of users out there are struggling to understand how much protection and due diligence needs to be done. One is online shopping. Second one is online banking. If I could ask the two of you, Atif, if you can take online shopping and give us a little bit of information on what we can do. And then, Brother Carmine, if you can take online banking right after Atif goes, it'd be great to learn some key areas as we wind down the information part of this.
Yeah, so online banking, the biggest thing, most important thing you could do, there's a lot of tips, but what I like to tell people all the time is read your credit card statement. I know it's painful sometimes, especially if you have multiple credit cards. That's also another tip. Just have one or two maximum credit cards. That's it.
And you're talking about online shopping, right?
For online shopping, yeah. For
okay,
online shopping, as well as your regular shopping, but have a consolidated type of credit card or credit cards, one or two maximum. And then reviewing the statement regularly is really important, because if there is a transaction that happened, or your password is compromised or something bad, you'll be able to find it right away. A lot of people don't even find it. They don't even review their statement. And so you're paying for stuff that, you should never even paid for. That's very fundamental. Now, the other side of it is, another quick advice is whenever you're online shopping, look at the top left corner of the browser, right next to the URL on the top, you'll see a lock, right? It's a quick tell. Is this going to be encrypted or not encrypted? I know I'm getting still fancy with the wording, but
what is encrypted?
Encrypted, yeah. So encrypted is basically scrambling out, protecting what's coming on in that session. That's what we mean by encryption. It protects some eavesdropper or someone's looking in. If I'm outside your house sniffing your network, I won't be able to see it because it's encrypted. I mean, there's ways I could try to overcome that, but generally it's harder to see. So when you're online shopping, one of the quickest things you could do is always look at the left corner, see if the lock is there. The lock signifies that encryption's happening. Hackers are getting even more crafty, and there's ways to potentially attack beyond that. But that's a first really quick guess. Then the second thing is, when you go do a transaction, you may want to have a single credit card or an account that you use regularly for types of transactions on a website. So that way, if you do have a compromise, you know where it's all coming to one place, and administratively, you don't have multiple accounts that could potentially be compromised. So there's many more things to say about this. I'll pause there and let Amran jump into, but those are a couple quick things to look at.
Yeah, so let's talk online banking.
So similar to what Atif just said, online banking, you want to make sure that you do your banking, because that's probably the most sensitive sort of transaction that you would do from home. So you would want to do it from a computer that has antivirus, that is up to date. So it's a more protected machine computer, right? And you use strong passwords. So a lot of the banks, what they do is they provide you two-factor authentication. What that really means is something you have, which is like a token that you would enter, and the password. So you would enter two pieces of information other than your user ID to log on to the banking site. And there are a lot of features available these days from banking perspective. So banks issue, you can get a card like this. It's good for 10 years. And what you do is you press a button here, and comes a number, and that number is only valid for a minute. So when you're logging in, you would put in that number and your password, and that's how you get into. So that's a secure way of getting into the system.
So anybody can get that card, whether Kamran?
Anybody can get that. So Bank of America, the one I have, I paid I think $25, and it's good for 10 years. I still have another 2 to 3 years left in this card. Now, if you don't have that, then they also provide you through SMS. That means when you log in, they're going to send you an SMS, and you will put in the 6-digit code or 8-digit code, and that will further authenticate. So what happens is if I get your password and I try to log in, the system is going to send an SMS to the phone. Now, so I would have to have your phone in my possession as well and unlocked to be able to get that code and put it in. So it makes it a lot harder for a hacker to get into the system when you have what is known as two-factor, meaning is you have another piece of code or another piece of information that you would enter when you're logging in other than just the password. And then there are other basic things like make sure that your machine has an antivirus running, make sure that it is up to date. You view your bank statements for any charges that may be fraudulent, any money transfer that you keep track of. And also I would say, the banking apps. So a lot of the banks, pretty much every single bank has their app. It's a more secure way of signing on to the banking application than from a browser. And similarly, you can do the same with shopping as well. Use the actual app from that organization or the bank. And so that's another way of making sure that the transaction you do is secure. The other thing is don't do banking from a public Wi-Fi, because you don't know that network is protected or not. So you can take extra measure. You can do, two-step login, and you can do other things. So use your phone. So everyone has the phone. So use that instead of a computer that is on a public computer. So if you're on a airport or something, there are devices there. You want to sign on from there. No, you don't want to do that. So you want to use your own device that is protected and secure.
So two things to follow up on that just before we go to question and answer. One thing is if one of you can tell us a little bit more briefly as possible on two-factor authentication. And the second part to that, when we're talking about using the app from the banks, if we're in a public cellular mode, for example, we're not on a Wi-Fi network, we're public, is that still safe?
If you're on a Wi-Fi network on a public, it can still be safe if you're using the application because things are being encrypted, and you have two-factor authentication. Now, really quickly, in simple term, two-factor authentication is, when you log in, you put in your username, and then you put in a password. So that is one factor. That means the only thing that you are putting in that somebody else doesn't know is your password. Two-factor means there's another additional piece of information that you would enter, and that would be in a lot of cases in the form of a code, a 6-digit code. Either you get it through an SMS from your bank, or you have a card like this that you can use, or you use biometrics on your phone to be able to log in. So that's a safer way of connecting to your bank and do the transactions. And then again, constantly monitor your transactions because your debit card is linked to your account, and so if that gets compromised because you did shopping somewhere, and then you can, if you're monitoring your statements, you'll be able to spot that right away. And banks are really good in terms of anytime there is anything fraudulent, they'll be able to refund you money, and sometime it will kick in automatically that there is a fraudulent activity happening, and you get a phone call. And always update your information. So if you have a change in phone number, make sure that you update it right away.
Yeah, and I want to underscore that one more time because I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years, and you would think that my stuff is pretty secure, which I would hope so. But even for me, I've had my credit card compromised 2 times in the past 10 years, right? So it happens, right? It's a reality. The way I caught it was I looked at my statements, right? It sounds like a simple thing, but people don't take the time to read statements, right? And then ask your wife or your spouse or who others that are using your card that, hey, did you do that? Is that a real transaction? Because that takes time, right? And it takes diligence, and it's really important to do that because, I got mine compromised a couple times. And that's just because maybe somewhere my credit card was used by a merchant, and that merchant had their systems compromised. So that credit card they had kept in their records got compromised. So then it got sold on the dark market, and we could talk about the dark web, and that's how the compromises happen. But your personal way to overcome that is by looking at your statements and then calling your banks. And banks always, I want to say always, 100% of the time, give you your money back and get you your money. But you got to ask, right? And if you're not even looking, then how are you going to get your money back?
Very good point. So we'll move it to Q&A. It looks like we got a bunch of questions pouring in. So the first question for both of you is, does parental control on a device limit access on apps? So if someone increases PC on a phone, will that block or limit things on a parental control? So if someone increases the parental controls on a phone, will that block or limit things on Snapchat or Instagram, or do parents need to access each of those apps individually and look how to adjust and limit content?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. So for Apple, which is a pretty dominant environment, that it does not limit the apps. So Apple has different buckets, and I recently went through this. I have 4 kids, and I was going through their profiles, and it does it by category. So entertainment versus games versus media, and so you'll be able to control the actual categories of apps, and then particularly you can. There's ways to go into the specific apps, say whether it's Snapchat or Facebook, and add additional controls. This is new. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this was not. You weren't able to do that, but today you can do that. It depends, but generally speaking, the answer is you can maintain that functionality while still applying controls.
Okay, great. And then as far as how do you protect your information while doing online shopping?
Brother Kama, I'll let you take that one.
So yeah, so it's a similar process, right? And that is you want to shop from known sort of well-known organizations, like Amazon or Walmart.com. So well-known organizations, so that you know. The second thing is, if you use an app for that organization, that's more secure than using the web browser. Another piece of information that you can, or a step that you can do is, make sure when you log in, you are using strong passwords. So a strong password is not like, Cameron123. So that's really something that is really easily can be snooped, or your email address, or your date of birth, or your house address. You don't want to use that. So you want something alphanumeric, text, letters, as well as some special character like semicolon or question mark. So you want to be able to protect that. And then, as Atif had mentioned earlier, keep track of your credit card, look at the lock sign to make sure that the information that's going through, that is your name, your address, your phone number, your credit card information, is all encrypted as it goes from your device to the retailer.
Yeah, and just some quick notes there. Like, you could use an at, like in your password. If you have an A in your password, you could use an at sign instead of an a dollar sign instead of an S. There's just some mnemonics that you could use to help you with your passwords. Putting a special character in your password makes it, I want to say, 500 times harder to crack than without a special character.
Yeah. And the other thing is, try not to reuse passwords for different sites as much as you can. But then, the big question comes is, I got, 50 different accounts. How am I going to remember 50 passwords or even 20 passwords? Well, there are software that you can use that manage that. So LastPass is one that I've been using for several years now. It's been really good. And I don't need to remember any of my password. I just need to remember one password. And that allows me to get into any of my systems. And I can change that one password as often as I want. And so all the other passwords are protected. So there are tools that are available. Some of them are free tools. Some of them just cost $20, $30 for the year. So it's a really cheap way, simple way that you can protect yourself while not having to worry about remembering really long passwords.
So continuing on that question, one of the questions that came in was about limiting sites and access for our children, in terms of the quality of sites that they're viewing and access, in terms of all the different devices that are in the house now on the Wi-Fi. An app that we use is called Disney Circle. If you guys are familiar with that, if you can just give us an idea of what is it about apps like Disney Circle, and I believe there's something out there called Bark. What do these apps do? How do we get them set up? What do you think is the purpose of these types of apps?
So a lot of these apps provide different levels of controls, and they're highly configurable. You can configure them based on age group. You can configure them based on the contents, and there are several other software that are available, and they work. They do a pretty good job in sort of controlling what sites can kids be able to get to. So they do a fairly good job. Disney Circle is one, Q Studio, Kaspersky, Norton Family Premiere, and there are a couple of other software that are out there. NetNanny is there. It's been there for a long time. And there are some software that run on computer. There's some that are plug into your sort of your router, Wi-Fi router. So you configure them in one place, and all the devices that go through it will have the similar level of protection. And then again, it's once you install it and configure it, you have to keep it updated. A lot of these software make that process very simple, where they have auto updates available every couple of days, anytime anything changes. So it's a fairly straightforward process. It doesn't require a lot of hand-holding in terms of changing. So you set it up once, and it does a pretty good job.
Yep, and getting a little practical and tactical there to add on, so that it's essentially it's parental controls. So I mentioned the operating systems like Apple and Android, they have built-in parental controls, so you don't have to necessarily pay anything to get some basic features. So that's one thing, and the other thing is don't over-engineer it, because if you could even just have it Monday through Fridays from this time to this time, the internet is on, and otherwise it's off, right? Some basic functionality to get the house familiar with the rules may be a good step forward versus coming up with a very complicated, sophisticated profile, which you end up turning off because something is broken and doesn't even work. So I would say crawl into parental controls.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I think one of the advantages or key things that really sold me on Circle was the idea that you can manage it remotely. So you don't have to be in the house on the Wi-Fi in order to enable access for an individual user. So I mean, over-engineering definitely is complicated and can get very complicated for the family. But the benefit is that you do have the ability by user, by family member, by age groups, and then access to different things based on timing, and also the fact that you can administer it remotely and you don't have to be in the house. So I thought those were key things that made me think that was a very useful option. Okay, so continuing on, one of the questions that came up was around Face ID. With the iPhones now, we're using Face ID, and most users are, their username and password sets that Face ID, and then it goes on. So we're asking, how safe is the Face ID format?
Yeah, so I'll start off on this one. So I'm actually very passionate about passwords being obsolete. It's going to be a matter of years, I would say now, that there won't be passwords anymore. Passwords is a flawed system, right? Having a password and having to remember it, and then having multiple passwords, is just something that was around long time ago and just never went away. So coming on into it, facial recognition, biometrics, that's the new thing. Whether it's your fingerprint or whether it's your face, I mean, debatable about how much more secure it is than say a password, because it depends on how it's stored and implemented. But logically speaking, the user adoption will be much better because you don't really have to do anything. Your face is your face, versus a password and managing the password and changing the password, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of biometrics. I think biometrics will increase compliance, which is that's the weakest link when it comes to what we call authentication, is when you log in or claim who you are.
Yeah, and we've seen facial recognition working pretty well. It's still in early stages. I know a cousin of mine, two brothers, one lost weight. Now he's able to unlock his brother's phone. So there are some of those things that do happen. If it's a very similar face, then it can unlock. But it's getting a lot better. It's getting a lot better, and it is going to replace passwords. So fingerprinting is there. That is sort of used everywhere, and then facial recognition is happening.
Okay, and then one last question before we close out. With one of the audience members is asking, is there really such a thing as a dark web, and how do we protect our children from it?
Oh, definitely, yes, there is, and there's a lot of money being made there. In the banking industry, we find out, how many customers you hear on the news media, that many credentials or user information or account were compromised. 20,000, 100,000, 8 million, or 20 million. Well, that's where the information is coming from. It's being sold and put on the dark web. So you can find, and they sell it. In lots. So a lot of 10 or a lot of 100 or a lot of 1,000 of credentials are sold at different price range. And what they do is they even look at through sort of simpler attacks to find out balance. And so accounts that have higher balance, those credentials are sold at much higher cost than the ones that don't have.
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time, but we could do a whole talk on dark web. But I'll leave you with this, that the dark web is absolutely true. It's not fake news. It absolutely exists. And it is close to 7,000 times the size of the internet that you know. 7,000 times bigger, right? It's out there. And there's a lot more to say about the dark web. The kids are, it'll be tougher for them to get in there because I'll just leave it at that. So, but think of that as the underground network, the underground world.
And just one last thing, audience members asking, is it better to set up child securities at the device level or at the router level? I think you guys covered this a little bit, but if you could briefly just say which one is better, you think?
I think you need to use a layered approach. So, set it up at the router level, and then have additional security at the device level, and then you might even need additional at the application level. So you need to build security in layers, just like you would secure your home in layers. It's the same process, and then again, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys joining us on a Sunday evening and sharing with us your great knowledge, mashallah. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the content that was discussed here, plus multiple resources that were not discussed here, are available in the slide deck, and we will make that available through Facebook, I believe, and you can also request it from us through pr@iecpa.org if you need that information and you're not able to access it through social media. And closing remarks, anything the both of you would like to share with the audience before we sign out?
No, I think, just educate yourself. You can look through the deck, and you can do the Google. In this age of Google, everything is there and available. So you can figure out how to secure your router and things like that. One thing that I would say is your shopping and banking should not be done from a computer that is used by kids to play games. Because the games have spyware that gets downloaded, or ransomware, or worms, which tracks and records information. So try not to utilize those computers. Try to keep the banking and shopping device separate from playing games.
Yep, and I'll leave with two quick ones. Change your password, right? And then number 2, check your credit card statements. You have to check your credit card statements.
Change your password today. Change it today.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. As always, appreciate these great sessions, and inshallah, look forward to doing more of these types of sessions, informational for our community. So jazakumullah khairan, and inshallah, everybody, if there's any more questions, you can continue to ask, and hopefully we'll be able to respond to you on the social media areas where you watched us. So that's us signing off. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.